and I'd finally find the right one, and he'd say, "Oh yeah, 20 years ago I visited that guy in Vermont, and you know, I haven't had any problems since with my arthritis."
You forgot all about it.
And so those guys, I said, well, you know, we're trying to gather some information. We're trying to collect people to form a society to keep that work going. And the first year we got 40 members, Charlie.
Huh. In that way.
And then as you kept treating people, we started to keep better records. And we went from 40 to about 120 the next year. People are renewing their memberships. And the next year, which is now, we got up to 1,200.
And your goals were completely beyond anything I've run into before.
The American Apitherapy Society. At this point, the American Apitherapy Society has as its mission to gather information about apitherapy, to organize it, and then to disseminate it free of charge to individuals who want to learn more about apitherapy.
Yeah. And then to do all this research on top of that, and even more difficult is to record and make available all this information. That's a big job in itself. Now, this record keeping takes more time and work than the actual treatment.
And most medical doctors, being paid to do their practice, don't have the time, the money, or the experience, the knowledge, to be able to keep records in a way which lends itself to scientific analysis.
Sure. I treat them or get them started to take the treatments, and they're on their own after that, and I have no way of following through on them.
Well, we have the National Multi-Center Apitherapy Study, which is designed to identify and then track these patients and to gather data, and so that's how I know what's happening with them. And I can tell you that there's an increasing number of medical doctors who are themselves your patients, who initially were skeptical, but are increasingly saying, empirically, I as a scientist see something happening here. And they like it, so they keep treating themselves.
Chinese medicine is very empirical. But we're already involved in Chinese medicine, and I mean, the basic feeling with Chinese medicine is that it existed before Western medicine, and therefore doesn't have anything to prove. I think the new step in apitherapy is going to be this big jump and really aligning it with a traditional medical protocol. And the closest one that fits it is really Chinese medicine.
In China, I first got acquainted with Dr. Fang Zhu in Nanjing.
In the early 1970s, fate made Dr. Feng Chu and Charlie Mraz aware of their parallel efforts on bee venom therapy, and they corresponded for almost 20 years before meeting.
Separated with a bamboo curtain for many years. We're doing the same thing at the same time, the same way, even though we never even knew each other. And which I think illustrates very strongly the universality of bee venom therapy.
Combining apitherapy with Chinese acupuncture in treatment.
Yes. It's interesting, when I started using bee venom therapy 60 years ago, just by experience I learned to apply the bee venom to the trigger points of the body when I knew nothing about acupuncture.
They are the same points.
The same point.
Or what the Chinese call sure points, meaning points that when you press it, the person will indicate that there's pain or sensation at that point, suggesting that something that acupuncture or bee therapy could occur at that spot. What acupuncture is saying is, let's add in additional points that address the problem energetically, according to the acupuncture model. But certainly acupuncturists are as a profession, are the most directly suited to do the treatment. They understand acupuncture theory, point theory. They already do needling, so using bees is not difficult for them to understand or to utilize. And there are 7,000 licensed practitioners of Chinese medicine here in the United States. I don't think they'll all take up bee therapy, but I think a great number of them will.
What we have seen in China is that medical doctors, highly respected medical doctors, have picked up apitherapy and are using that on thousands of patients here in China. And yet, in America, for the most part, the beekeepers are the only ones doing it, with few exceptions, medical doctors. But for the most part, it's the beekeepers who are doing it. Yet in China, it's the medical doctors. Before I came to China, I was told that on the shelves where people buy their drugs, that a lot of the products were made with royal jelly or honey or propolis.
Most people think the bee product is electronic.
But in traditional Chinese medicine, which you've studied, do they talk about the bee products as a serious medicine, or?
Later, the royal jelly.
Holistic medicine is actually, in many respects, more alive and well here in the United States than in China. We had that one visit to the apitherapy clinic where they were just unable to prescribe to a patient anything other than apitherapy, even though herbs or vitamins or diet or exercise may have been well indicated. I mean, it's very compartmentalized there. If you want acupuncture, you go to an acupuncture clinic. If you want herbs, you go to an herbalist. And this is the delivery system. This is the way to get the best health care to the most amount of people. The trade-off is that they're not able to really provide what we refer to as holistic medicine here in quite the way that we do it. Here, we'll prescribe royal jelly plus apitherapy or vitamin C plus apitherapy, things that they're aware of, but simply their hands are tied. This is in modern China. Historically, that wasn't the case. In that respect, I think apitherapy is going to develop in a very unique way in the West. It'll be apitherapy that includes and encompasses dietary recommendations, stress management, herbal medicines, supplements in one package. And I think that's what that will be our contribution.
We saw this clinic in the hospital in Beijing. This is a relatively poor country, a lot of manpower. They're using live honeybees instead of an expensive Western drug.
Sure.
And there's been a great public response of people who want to learn about your work. Then we've had the opportunity to go abroad, and you've consulted with the French physicians at their equivalent of the NIH. Here we are in Hong Kong, and you've just come back from talking with the Chinese physicians who are doing apitherapy. It also costs money, and it could be one of the goals of the society to keep the lines of communication open around the world so we can really gather information and knowledge.
Because they're relatively poor beekeepers. They don't. He doesn't eat royal jelly and pollen during the summer because they have it and they sell it. But whatever they have left over, then his family eat it in the winter.
And not just the honeybee stings, but the use of the royal jelly, the use of the pollen, the propolis, the raw honey, treatment of burns. I mean, we learned a lot in terms of what these products are used for, and that's all part of apitherapy, not just the bee stings.